Hi guys, I am just waiting for my oldest and dearest friend from middle school, Alistair, to join us. We are going to have some great dialogue about his new business venture. I'm super excited. You're going to love his energy. He is absolutely love in human form. So I'm just waiting for him to join us and then we can start. Hope everybody is well, especially during this crazy time. There he is, my star of the evening.
Hello,
Oh,
how are you?
I love. That's why you took long, because you needed
I
to
didn't,
be.
I
You
didn't
need,
change spots. I didn't like literally. You came out with the backdrop, and I'm just like,
wait
here
a
my.
minute. So you pulled a Beyonce and Jay Z, which from the museum?
I didn't do much at all. I was like, well, this is a bit more color
I love it.
than the backdrop. How are you? Good to see you.
Same here. I'm so glad. There had to be a reason that you're doing this because I'm all about this right now. I just felt all of a sudden inspired to just get all types of people that I feel some type of energy connection with to share their story, to inspire, motivate, positivity, just so people can learn from. Like, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right,
I'm all
right,
about that
right,
platform. Like, I'm just in a place where like we can always do gossip and all that kind of fun stuff. But now
right.
it's like in this time where people are going through depression and all this craziness, like what positivity is coming out of this crazy time?
Right, right, right. Well, I told you that quarantine has been very, very good to me. I think that pre-quarantine, I felt like I was spinning and I really wasn't in my body.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that quarantine allowed me to kind of center myself and ground myself,
Mm-hmm.
and to reconnect with myself in a much deeper and real way. So despite the circumstances, I feel really grateful for this pandemic, and
Yeah.
and the force to kind of deal with myself in a real way for sure. And I think there's a lot to be grateful for throughout all of this.
It's like it's messed up. Like I have some people that I know that I love deeply that's been affected by corona.
Right,
And
right,
then everything like you just don't know and it's just enhanced the chances that we're taking every day compared to before where maybe
right,
before
right,
it wasn't that serious and now it's like, yo, it's serious.
right,
So
right,
I
right,
feel
right,
like, yeah, mentally I think it did give you time to think and it gave
right,
you time to take a step back and it's like what the hell are we rushing for because ain't nothing to go
right,
to now.
right,
We're not
right.
chilling, we're not getting drinks, we're not getting dinner the way we want, you know, like
Well, I think it also highlights that there wasn't anything to go to before. Like, I think it's so interesting because, like, of course, I had my favorite restaurants. I live in New York, so I had my favorite restaurants, and, I don't drink anymore. So, I mean, I would go to the bar to meet up with friends, but I think that it really, like, highlighted to me this period of, like, who's important? Who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to hear from?
who do you
Where's my
care about?
family? Who do I
Mm-hmm.
care about?
Mm-hmm.
And also recognizing how much I needed to do enough self care to maintain those relationships.
Yeah.
Because I think that without my own personal self care, I'm not functional, and it's super important to be functional 100%.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Texting is kind of like rude. It's kind of like you're not really putting much into it. But in right now with everything going on, I feel like I my texting is my check-in. Like, is
Yeah, oh,
everybody
absolutely.
good? Like you do
Absolutely.
multiple group chats, like
Absolutely.
you need to have dialogue regardless how it is. So
Right.
I'm grateful that we have this
Right, right.
because
Well,
I when I
I've been using audio messages via my iPhone. I send an audio message to use the bathroom. I just love audio messages. Like
yeah.
everyone gets one. I just love them.
Well, coming from the person who in middle school did prank calls and
Oh Lord.
just your voice had people crying on the phone.
I was it was so weird. I was oh God. I was recently thinking about Lord, and this is my business account. I should not just the same. I was recently thinking about the time that we prank called that guy and he thought I was a girl and my name was Kim. Do you remember your name? Like so if you, everyone my voice before puberty was just so much higher that I had a very feminine sounding voice, So I
No,
got
but you wait. To that feminine voice, you added attitude, and
lots. I
people were
mean,
not dealing with you.
it was more than enough for everybody. And so we prank called some guy, and I ended up being like a long-term relationship with this guy who I don't even know. But
I'm
long story
crying.
longer, all of we had three-way at the time. Three-way was
Yes.
massive
Wait, we
at the
had
time.
beepers and we
We
had
had
three
we
ways.
had
So
three
these
ways.
young cats don't
Like
understand that we got it popping on the three way.
we had three-way, and then like the cool thing was that if somebody else had three-way, they would call somebody else. Like, so I remember being on the phone with like 95 people talking to this guy. It was just craziness. It was chaos. But I was recently thinking about how ridiculous
No,
that was.
because you have to, we're so off our topic, but I have to bring it to why we got here.
Right,
Think about us kids, right? Middle school drama club. Our parents couldn't pick us up until 6. We
right,
had to
right,
after
right.
school. We had to get to
We
the
had to
Boys and
figure it
Girls
out. We
Club.
had to figure it out.
We had to go to Boys and Girls Club. We had to eat the snacks. We get
Right.
picked up. We do our homework, and we're back on the phones. And what
Right,
else are we
right,
gonna do?
right, right, right,
We had
right,
nothing
right.
to do but
We had a
play.
lot going on. We had a lot going on. Like, and the real truth is, I feel so, speaking of positivity, I look back at my experiences in Union Township,
Yep.
and I am just so grateful for the exposure and
Yes.
grateful for the personalities and grateful for all of the different people. Because, I mean, back then, it was a middle class town.
Yep.
And it can skew either way. It can skew lower middle class, it can skew
Uh-huh.
upper middle class, but it was a
Yep.
middle class town. And you were just exposed to so many different walks of life, especially once we got to high school. So when I look back on it, it was a great, like, a precursor to reality after
Yes.
leaving high school, and it was a great moment for me. It was, at the time, it was horrible, but looking back,
No,
it was great
I know.
exposure for me, 100%.
Middle school, I think we were blessed in such a way because no one, we were at that age where we didn't do any differences, divides, or nothing like that. We were
Right,
all just
right,
friends, and that's what it was. High
right,
school
right.
was cruel. I didn't really, look, me, I wasn't a big high
I
school fan. I'd rather
know.
do
Neither was
college.
neither was I. I wasn't.
And maybe
I
that's what we needed.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't go back. I wouldn't
No,
go back. I'm good.
I mean, of course, I would go back as the person I am now. I mean,
Yes.
there are just, I look back and I'm thinking there's like a list of people who I would totally be friends with or closer to now than I was, like Corinne Fisher or like Lisa
You
Dombrowski,
dropped a net.
like random, like just like, and like I still see Corinne ever so often. I probably see Corinne once every 2 years around the way,
Yeah.
here in New York. But there's just so many people I just missed opportunities because I wasn't in that mental space at that time. But uh,
Yeah, we just
good
move
people.
different now. So then when you apply it
Yeah,
to then, it would have been a whole different thing.
it would have been a whole different thing. It would have been a
So
whole
now
different thing.
let's get to the juice. Where are you at
Yeah,
right now? What is this new business venture? I'm all for it.
thank
Tell me your
you.
background and how you got into this step.
So I feel so I the over the course of the past 3 years for me personally,
Mhm.
it has been a journey of functional health. And let me be all the way clear, it has been an ugly journey because I was in the throes and the depths and the hell of depression
Oh,
3 years ago. And to the point of like suicidal, like for 3 years ago. And there was a moment for myself where I was like, you know what? Enough is enough. I have to live in my truth. I have to be healthy. I have to own who I am. And I think that in doing so, that was the first start to this process. But I didn't recognize that at that moment when I chose to really own my humanity, that I was beginning from a suicidal, depressed position. So it wasn't like I one day woke up and was like, I'm healed, I'm healthy. It
mhm.
took years in order for me to really ground myself in my wholeness, and it's still a daily, moment to moment process. So Func Soul, it stands for functional soul, and I think that that's something that I've learned over the course of the past 3 years is to how to be better functional, how
Mhm.
to thrive in my functional health. And it really very much is a lifestyle. And I'm really, really grateful. And I think that I was just talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and I was like, when I was suicidal, when I was depressed, I had a lifestyle that was depressed and suicidal. And that lifestyle is so different from the person I am now, being functional and healthy, So I think that, especially for people of color, and the LGBTQIA community, I think that because we've gone through so much trauma growing up, we haven't learned the skills, many of us haven't learned the skills on being functional, what to eat, how to exercise, how to create a lifestyle that promotes functional health. And I'm really grateful that over the course of the past 3 years, I've been really dedicated to it. It has not been a clean journey whatsoever, but I'm able to stand here now having learned a lot of lessons because of it. So I'm really grateful for that.
What resources did you have to help you?
Hope, faith, and prayer,
Okay.
and trial and error. What ended up happening was, the long story longer, it began with, it began with a whole bunch of stuff, but it began with sensory deprivation tanks. So float tanks, have you heard about this? Where
No.
they put you into a float tank, and the float tank is pitch black, it's salt water, and it gives you the feeling as if you are like weightless. So you have nothing kind of touching you. You're completely naked. It's completely black. And in that space, you're able to kind of process what your thoughts are and work through a lot of that. So it began all the way back there with float tanks. But even beyond that, I think the first step was me saying, enough is enough. I want to be healthy. That's the first step.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I want to be healthy. I want to start living for me. I want to own my life. I think for anyone who is looking to be more functional or better functional or thrive more functionally, the first step is you saying, enough is enough. I'm tired of going through the motions. I want to be a healthy, whole human being. And then once you make that decision, then you start looking for ways to figure out your functional health. So for me, it began with float tanks, and that lasted for a series of 6 months or so. But I bounced from a variety of different therapy treatments, supplement treatments, exercise treatments, and I figured out what worked well for me, what works well for me. So,
Yeah.
but I think the first step for everyone is to first say, hey, I want to be healthy. I want to love myself. I want to respect myself. I want to treat myself well.
Yeah.
And that's the first step for anybody, I would say.
Now, this was all you going in on it yourself, saying, I'm going to do this, or did you have family pushing you, friends pushing you?
No, I didn't have family or friends pushing me. I definitely had support. I think that especially with family, my family didn't really they didn't know the journey I was going on because again, they didn't have the skills for their functional health,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you think about people of color, especially Black people, we've gone through the traumas of segregation, the traumas of slavery, the traumas of Jim Crow, the traumas of racism. We're dealing with the traumas of the prison system. We're dealing with the traumas of the police system, things
Yeah.
like that across the board, the traumas of the education system. Black people have gone through a lot. So in order for us to cope very much with those traumas, we've learned a lifestyle to cope. So, for us, growing up, when we were feeling bad, my mother would make some macaroni and cheese, and like that macaroni and cheese would be banging, or that fried chicken would be banging, but it wasn't healthy for me to function. It was only good enough for me to cope. So
Yeah.
my fam to cope with trauma. So my family, they didn't understand the journey that I was on, but they were very, very supportive because they saw the results, as
Yeah.
were my friends as well.
So you knew, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for me, and I'm going to do whatever steps it takes to get where I got to get.
Yeah. And again, it was trial and error, but once you start seeing the results and feeling like, because again, it
Yes.
wasn't like I was like trying to gain all this muscle mass or trying to be like,
Right.
this completely different human being. I just started to feel good. And the more I begin to feel better, the more I begin to say, I need to figure out more options, more ways of doing this, So, I don't, the reason why I'm sober is that being sober keeps me mentally functional, emotionally functional. So
Yeah.
it's a whole lifestyle of figuring out how to thrive. And it has not been an overnight journey by any means, by any means.
But how grateful I am that that worked for you, and you're here,
yeah,
and you're
yeah,
good, and you're
yeah.
like, ain't nothing taking over me. I'm controlling what's
I'm
going on.
better. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm better. I'm better. I'm really grateful. And I hope that Func Soul, my business, helps other people to be better for what works real and well for them. Because
Yes.
my functional health journey is different from somebody else's functional health journey. But we all should be on one because we all need to be functional, to live and serve a life that's beautiful to us. So yeah.
But that's why we're like, with faith, with family, friends, support,
Yeah.
it's so needed.
Yeah.
Whatever works for somebody, do it.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
100%.
Yes, and
100%.
people can't, like, that's why with things, opinions are good. We learn from it. If it applies to you, take it. If it
Right.
doesn't,
Right.
do what works for you, though.
Right.
Like, you know
Right.
what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And
Right.
people are
Right.
so small-minded with things. Like, as though they
Right.
don't go through stuff. Please don't act like you're
Right.
not going through
Right.
something.
Right.
Nobody,
Right.
everybody's in
Right.
the same boat.
Right.
Everybody's in the
Right.
same
Right.
boat, just handling it in different ways, different
Right.
levels of seriousness.
Right. And I think that, again, to your point, so very, very often when I tell people I don't drink, it's not that I can't drink or that I'm against drinking. It doesn't work for me. Smoking weed doesn't work for me. I am pro weed. I am pro drugs. I'm pro alcohol. It doesn't fit into my life like that.
Yeah.
I'm pro you living your life the way that you feel you need to live your life. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's super important, is that, like, again, if you like go into a club and dance and letting it all out, that's your way of being functional. Do that. You know what I'm saying? If it's going to a church or going to a mosque, you do that. There's no one way of being functional, and there is no reason for me to judge how you are healthy as long as you're able to feel good about your life,
Right.
and to contribute to others.
And people have to, like, know your limits, know what you can and cannot do.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
Like, I'm 4'4". I know
Right.
I could barely drink a pina colada to the whole thing, because I'll be sitting there like falling asleep already. I know I'm smaller. So my body's gonna hit me different than maybe the average size person. You have to know what you can or cannot do, especially if you're damn near in your 30s and 40s. Like, you should know by now.
Well, age is something, man, because years ago I could drink, I could smoke. Now and I can even tell you this, with quarantine, I could see the trajectory of if I eat the wrong thing or drink the wrong thing. So if I ate cake at the beginning of quarantine, I could trace my functional health, and how poor it was weeks later back to that piece of cake. Because, long story longer, if I ate the wrong piece of cake, I have IBS, so then my stomach would be inflamed.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to sleep, and I wouldn't be sleeping, so I wouldn't be healthy. And that would be like 3 or 4 weeks. I'm just like, why am I eating cake if it's causing me all this drama and trauma? But a lot of that comes from just age. Because, again, when I was 24, now 35.
Right.
When I was 24, it was a lot easier. Like, I
and
could eat whatever I
35
want.
look a whole lot damn different than back in the day.
Yeah.
It's a whole different way. 35. Even saying it is a whole different thing now.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm
Absolutely.
35. Like,
Yeah.
I'm 5 away from 40. Chill.
I can't wait till 40, man. 40 is going to be the turn up. I could not wait for it.
Let me tell you something. I was pregnant for my 30th, and I was like, oh my God, I wanted this big bash. I want to be dancing. I was like, at my 40th, I'm turning. I will be on a stage.
I can't wait.
On a speaker, dancing. Okay?
I can't wait.
Put my jam on so I can celebrate 40.
It's going to be a good time. Yeah.
Now tell me, with your business, so obviously with everything going on with the pandemic, how are you doing it? Virtual? Like, how does one join? What are the steps?
Right. So you can always go to my website, Func Soul, FUNC, like functional, soul.com, and it gives you a list of offerings and options and services. In the coming weeks or so, we'll be offering more recurring classes. Right now, we're focusing in on private events. And if you purchase a private event, we're giving a private away to a BIPOC, that's a Black, Indigenous people, people of color, or LGBTQIA plus group. and it stems from my desire to offer more of these health and wellness services to communities of color or to the queer community, because they are definitely underserved when it comes down to health and
Yeah.
wellness.
Yeah.
The target for health and wellness tends to be, according to the data, it tends to skew towards predominantly white demographics with money, you know, because they have the money to spend on a $25, $35 an hour
Right.
class, a
Yep.
$40 an hour class. Many LGBTQ people or BIPOC people cannot afford it. So I'm looking forward to offering the services that I was charging. Of course, white people, $25 a class. I'm looking to offer those services to the BIPOC community, the LGBTQ community, for free. And the long-term goal is to kind of build an audience that is incredibly diverse, so
Yep.
that when we do grow and begin to offer a bunch more, we'll be able to keep the BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus communities at the forefront in our decision making. And
Yeah.
that's something that's really important to me. So
Now,
I'm looking forward to it.
are you teaching?
I'm teaching all the classes right now.
Okay.
And that has been a shift, because when I was working at Broadway Bodies, great program, phenomenal, closed down due to quarantine,
Right.
due to COVID. When I was working at Broadway Bodies, I did not have to teach all of the classes. So I am getting back into the game of teaching, which is where I really should be, and probably should have never have left. So that's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. But even at Broadway Bodies, though, that being completely transparent, I was doing a bigger client. So I was doing Spotify, I was doing Dropbox, I
Right.
was doing, Tommy Hilfiger, I was doing, a lot, Elle Magazine. I was doing higher end. I'm saying higher end. I was doing larger clients. And because of that, it wasn't as frequent as the regular classes each week. So I'm doing it more recurring now, and it feels good. It feels good to create, and it feels good to exercise, and it feels good
Yeah.
to make people smile and to see other people enjoying the experience. So I'm loving it a lot more than I did before, and that's a blessing.
It's like always since we were little. Like, you haven't changed one bit. Your heart hasn't changed. It's only gotten
Yeah,
bigger and bigger. And you always, that's the way we were always similar. We ain't let nobody get to us. We could give
yeah, it
a
was
damn, and we knew what we wanted to do, and we do it.
right.
And
Well,
at the end of it
yeah.
all, that we hey, if people want to be small-minded, if people want to be ignorant, y'all can go ahead. We're gonna keep it moving. You know what I mean?
Well, a question for you. How are you handling all of this, like Black Lives Matter, having a Black daughter? How does that feel? How are you processing all of it overall?
It's wow. And you're probably the first person that's ever asked me that. Honest.
Really? How
Honest.
how am I the first person to ever ask you that, and your daughter is Black?
I,
What?
honest. She's for 5, she's a very, not old soul per se, but she's a teenagery 5. Like, she wants to
Yeah.
know everything, she'll question. And I always, like, so best way to say it is with me being different, right?
Right.
Everything's
Right.
always, I always started, oh, mommy's small. Mommy's just
Right.
small.
Right.
Some people are tall. Some people are like this. And then she'd be like, oh, okay. But then she's always noticing even more people that are different. But then I'll tell her, I'll say, don't stare, it's rude. You don't like it if people stare at mommy and it's rude.
Right.
So she
Right.
doesn't
Right.
stare. If she has a
Right.
question, she'll wait till we come home to ask. She won't be like, why she
Right.
look like that? Or,
Right. Right.
so we've
Right.
always had this kind of dialogue. And we're very blunt. We say it in a way for her to understand, but for her not to be, for 5, her heart shouldn't be hurting. Like,
Right.
you know
Right.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
For 5,
Because
her heart shouldn't be hurting.
she's somebody that holds on to that. Like, my mother was
Right.
stuck in India
Right.
for 4 months, and she still tells my mother, like, what you did to me was wrong. You shouldn't have went to India. You were stuck.
Whoa.
Yeah. And my mom came back in June, and she still will say it
Wow.
to my mom, like, you hurt me. So, like,
Right.
with the George
Right.
Floyd thing, that was all over the news.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I said, they hurt him. He was African
Right.
American, like half
Right.
like you are, but
Right.
you're not supposed to hurt anybody. And
Right.
everybody has to be
Right.
treated fairly. So it's always like, I've never made her feel like there's a divide with anything. I
Right. Right.
always just you don't do that. You don't want to hurt people's feelings. You don't want to treat people badly.
Right.
Always,
Right.
it was just that kind of thing. Like, be open-minded. Like,
right,
you play with
right,
everybody, girl. Don't, you play
right,
with everybody. It don't matter.
right, right,
So it's like with me, I think it was that kind of example for her, because she's like, okay, so what? My mom's small, so what? So, oh, they're
right,
African American, so what? They're
right,
Indian, so what? You know what I mean?
right,
She could
right,
care less. She's
right.
cutting it up everywhere she go. Like, she
I
doesn't
believe she is.
she doesn't
I
care.
believe it. I
So
believe it.
yeah, but one thing I could say is crazy as it seems, I'm grateful she's a girl, because
Right,
for the men, for boys, it's very. Let me tell you, before I even have kids, the Trayvon Martin thing, that could have been my
right,
cousins. My cousins are dark as
right,
hell
right,
with
right,
a hoodie
right,
on.
right, right,
We don't know
right,
who's black or
right,
who's Hawaiian. You get
right,
what I'm saying? Like, you
right,
don't know that.
right,
So
right,
that
right.
is where it bothered me. Like, dude, honestly, you don't know. In the darkness, we're all black as hell. It doesn't.
Right, right,
No one has a right to
right,
put their hands on you or kill you. Period. I don't.
right, 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 right. Yeah, it's a weird time, for me, the George Floyd
Ugh,
situation is one major situation. Breonna Taylor situation is
yes.
another major one.
Yeah.
But I also think, those are those situations with the police where I'm kind of like, what is going on? We need to address policing overall, you know what I'm saying? Period. Because I think that when you give undertrained people the ability to use force in anything, and again, from
Mhm.
what I've seen in the postings, the police department has less training than like a hairstylist. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you put them into situations that are severe, and they have power and they are able to use force. It creates a lot of red flags. You add race to the mix of it, and with our history of race, it adds a lot of variables, and variables that we also are struggling to define. So that's trouble. But things that really bother me with regard to the Black Lives Matter movement is the prison system. The fact that we are caging human beings
Mhm.
in New York City. The cost for one inmate in New York City is $300,000 a year for one inmate. And it makes me really think to myself, it costs, like, I don't make $300,000 anywhere near it. And I
But we
live
damn sure
pretty
are
well
paying
in,
for that. We're paying to keep them
like,
there. Yeah.
and we're paying to keep them there, and I'm living pretty comfortably, and I'm sure that they aren't getting the rehabilitative services that they need for 300K that I would like eat up. I'd be able to do a foot tank every single day of my life for that kind of money. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those
Yeah.
things where we do, and of course the prison system disproportionately is fueled and is built up of Black and brown people. So I think there's just a lot of different things with regard to Black Lives Matter that this movement is addressing for the first time. It's not for the first time, lies. But I think that the consciousness, because of quarantine, feels so fresh and so real. And I think that because of that, eyes are opening and ears are opening. So I'm grateful for this movement because it's waking us up a bit more. The thing that bugs me out is like I remember having to deal with racism in union. So like when we're talking about the realities of racism, I'm always so surprised when people are like, there is no racism, because I'm just like, it's just that's not how that works. Again, me being a dark-skinned Black male, I have experienced racism to my face growing up by people of my own age,
Mm-hmm.
people who are older in age. And in some regard, it's like, why are we acting like people aren't using racial slurs in private conversations with their family and friends? Like,
Social media, like, with, to me, that George Floyd thing, we literally saw them that the police officers kill, well, that one particular one, kill him right in front of us, right?
right,
What more
right,
do you
right,
need? What
right,
more do
right,
you need?
right,
Like, we
right,
saw it.
right,
We saw
right,
it, like they,
right,
you killed another person in front of us
right, right, right,
with the
right,
cuffs
right,
on. What
right,
was he going to do? If he ran
right, right,
away, you could have shot him. If he ran away, he was right there. You could have
right,
shot him in the legs.
right.
See?
Yeah,
M
yeah,
for
yeah,
B. We had
yeah.
a black cafeteria and a white
We
cafeteria in
did,
my
we
school. We
did,
did.
we did.
I mean, but did we
And
think you?
and
Did we think it was
and
that serious then, though, or did
and
we just
and
was
and
like, whatever?
in yeah, in fairness to the black cafeteria and the white cafeteria, it was in part because you tended to hang around people who you had relationships with, and they tended to be
Right.
people
We were
who looked like
clicks.
you.
We were clicks.
So yeah, so because I so also the real truth, I was in the black cafeteria for a good week, my freshman year, and I scurried over to that white cafeteria so quickly, because it was just
Right.
that
Right.
at at that time of my life, it wasn't my people, and of course, like at that being a flamboyant, effeminate male, with many of my many this is a bigger issue with regard to the black community when it comes to queer issues.
Right.
But definitely growing up, that the people I was with, I wasn't as accepted at that stage of my life, and I didn't have the strength at that stage of my life to stand up for myself and to own who I am.
Right.
So I kind of went and gravitated towards the environment that felt a
But
bit more
that's what it
welcoming,
is.
and at that was the white cafeteria. Yeah, it was the white cafeteria,
Hey,
but
and
it's
you know what
we're
it is?
getting better.
But the thing is, I always say this, and I probably said it on these other episodes. My mother always told me, sometimes you just gel with certain people, it doesn't matter, race,
Yeah,
color, whatever.
right,
Sometimes you
right,
gel with certain
right,
people, and sometimes you just don't. And some people
right,
like you, and
right,
they just don't. And the ones that
right,
don't, I'm
right,
sorry, it's fine.
right,
We don't have
right,
to. We don't
right,
have to
right,
build on that. We just don't mesh.
right,
You get what I'm saying?
right,
So at that
right,
time, that's who
right.
we meshed with.
That's who we meshed with, right? Right.
Yeah.
That was who we meshed with according to who and where we were at the time. I
If
think
if
that
we're gonna go there, how about teachers? Some teachers liked
yeah,
us just to like us.
of
Some didn't.
course,
Some
of
didn't. We know who
course,
the a-hole teachers were and who the good teachers were.
right,
That
right,
explains that some people just don't jive with you and some people
right,
will.
right, right, right,
Me
right, right.
personally, my house was worried about who was giving me more oil and vinegar on them subs and who was
Those,
who.
I mean, the oil and vinegar in high school was real. Like you
That's
was
what
like
I'm
I
saying.
like it was very, very
There
real.
was
I
right.
remember
They
those
weren't trying to
the
give us more
food.
on the sandwich.
Yeah. It was it
Like we
was
had to be
it
like,
was
can we have
something
more?
high school.
And
Yeah,
the
it was
curly fries?
something.
Like we
The
were
curly
holding on to curly
fries, tater
fries.
tot, those pizza Thursdays. High school, you in high school in Union Township was something else. Down to the white and black cafeteria, it was something else for
What
sure.
could
But
you do?
again,
What could you do?
I'm
And
grateful
we
for
don't
those
have a racist bone in
experiences.
our body. We're sitting up here like, yeah, we was cutting it up.
Well, the real truth is that I had to really deal and still continue to deal with a lot of internalized racism.
Yeah.
Being a black gay man, I had to really, I had to and continue to have to go through my process of really grounding myself, including myself in the black conversation. I was talking to a friend of mine last week. I was saying to her, like, it's feeling so excluded by the black community. Because I felt so angry, I rejected the black community for a very long period of my life. And I think that in some regard, so much of what I'm doing now is because I recognize that it's so important for me to include the communities of color because that's another way for me to feel seen and held and
Yeah.
connected.
Mm.
And it's been a process. So I think that what I've learned through this movement, and of course my process with race has been a longer process than this movement,
Mhm.
but this movement in particular, I think was a great moment for me to say, where am I falling short in a real way with regard to race relations in America? So long story longer. At the end of my tenure at Broadway Bodies, at the peak of Black Lives Matter. Hi, Bonnie. At the end of my tenure at Broadway Bodies, I reached out to the Black community of Broadway Bodies, and I said, okay, Broadway Bodies, I want to hear from you. I want to use this platform to elevate Black voices. I want to hear from you. You are important. Let's use this time right now during June. During quarantine, we're inching towards Juneteenth. I want to hear from the Black voices, right? Send out a big newsletter. Nobody responded. And immediately my first thought was, well, I changed my email servers, so it's a new email server. Or, you know, the next thought
Oh my
was, well,
God.
Black people are tired of having rationalizing. It's like Black people are tired of having to explain themselves, and that's the reason why. And after I realized, Alistair, for the past 6 years, have been serving 25-year-old white female professionals. So if you asked me who my demographic was at Broadway Bodies, I would say 25-year-old white female professionals. And all of my decisions were based on serving that demographic because they had the money and they were the ones that were supporting this program. And do I think that that's a bad thing or a good thing? No. It's just more so if I, as a Black man, am not including Black voices in the conversation in my day-to-day decision-making with regard to the business I'm responsible for, who else is? You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And that's the real talk with regard to Func Soul. It was the recognition of being like, oh, I'm part of the problem. And I think that for so many people of color, especially when you're in leadership positions, you tend to think, well, because I'm Black or because I'm brown or because I'm gay, I check off the box of diversity for this particular company or business, when really we should be using the platform to elevate and reach out to more Black, brown, LGBTQ voices, if that's the role that we play and hold. So again, my desire going forward is just to keep the BIPOC and LGBTQIA communities at the forefront of my mind, because again, if I don't, who else is? Who else will?
But that's
and
your
again,
purpose. That's your purpose, and you found
that's
it.
the purpose, the mission. Yeah, and the truth is that it's not even a matter of it being a bad thing or a good thing. Am I angry about serving 25 to 35-year-old white females? No, because I've made wonderful relationships, and that is a demographic of our humanity that needs to be served. I'm going to.
You're still making an impact. You're still making an
I'm going to
impact.
continue to do so. I'm going to continue to serve, but I definitely want to bring the BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus communities to the forefront of my mind when I'm making these decisions with regard to my business, because I also know that those communities are underserved as well. And they have significant amount of traumas that I know that my services can better support and help. So I think that, again, long story, very long, I just think that before I went into Black Lives Matter this time around, and the whole George Floyd and the whole protest, I went in kind of pointing the finger, being like, it's all you all, it's the police department, it's the prison system, it's this person, it's that person, it's her, it's him, it's white people, it's yellow people, it's all these different people. And it took me about 3 or 4 months to be like, wait, is it me? Like, am I part of the problem in some way? And of course, when you really examine and deal with yourself, you're like, holy shit, I'm part of the problem. Like, I can be doing better for my own community, and this directly affects people who I know, who I love, who I care for, family members and friends, and I can do better. So to your earlier point about racism and us not being racist, I think it's so important for us to really check ourselves, because I don't, I would venture to say that I do not operate in a racist way, but there may be things underlying that I have not dealt with that requires me to be more conscious about. And that's part of, the work I'm trying to do, is to be far more conscious about the work that I need to do to serve my communities, as well as all humans across the board.
See, the funny thing is, mine went the opposite way, right? So you felt like that with your own people. Same thing with me. I always felt like if it wasn't my immediate family outside Indian folk, always I felt we're so small-minded, so ignorant, just because I was different, right? Just because I don't talk with an Indian accent. I'm like, little do you guys know, I speak a language. I'm Indian as heck. I'm so Bollywood. It's like, I'm so rooted in my culture. I grew up in Jersey City and Union. Like, how you want me to talk? I was born and raised out here in Jersey. So it's like, I always felt like, damn, like, y'all really don't get me. I'm your own. Like, how do you not get me? Like, I'm eating curry. I'm watching the movies. I can talk to you about anything. So then I said, you know what? Sometimes you don't need to talk about it. You just show them. And that's what I did. I'm like, I've seen it when I, married an African American. I had certain people in my family that were small-minded about that. When did they shut up? After that, we've been married for 8 years with a 5-year-old daughter, and everything is just fine. Thank God. Knock on wood. God is good. Like, so I'm not. You know, you pick your battles, and you pick what you want to fight for till the end. And to what you were saying, to your point, that's your purpose. You found it. And now you take that to the next level to say, I'm going to show y'all. I'm going to take everything that happened and I'm going to make it the absolute best inspirational platform for people that were like me, no matter what nationality you are.
I think that you know your people best, and your people does not necessarily mean all Black people, but I definitely know a whole demographic of urban poor people of color who could really benefit from health and wellness services that are of quality, you know, and that's one thing I've learned through Broadway Bodies, and even beyond that, you know, so many people who have the money to pay for these services, they hate the treadmills just like everybody else.
Thank you. And you're right, please.
But they found services, and they had the money for services that feel like hobbies. And for so many people, dance is a great way of creativity and expression, but it's a phenomenal way of exercise. So I know that there are so many people who I grew up with from the churches that I was able to be a part of, to Vauxhall, New Jersey, who would really benefit from these services. And I hope that my program does an effective job of communicating and bringing them to the table. But
ain't nobody, like I had people that used to always, like I had one person that would always say, oh, you know, those are Black issues. You're not going to get that. It's Black issues, you know? And I'm like, you're right. I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get it. Just like you wouldn't get how it is being a little person, or you wouldn't get the struggles you went through as a man, an African-American man, and his sexuality and everything. You understand what I'm saying? Nobody's going to get it, but doesn't mean we don't feel compassion for it or we don't want to help. Like, to me, anybody that pulls that card, like my in-laws, same, my family, same. Anybody that pulls that racial card bullshit, I end the convo. Like, I don't bring that Black stuff, that Indian stuff, that this stuff, general, respectable conversation, because you bringing that is causing divide. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
what's heartbreaking is that, and New York has been really good for teaching this to me, is the idea of like the idea that what's heartbreaking is that we still discuss race, and it's so real for so many of us in such negative ways. Or even the idea of that being an open-minded conversation. It's you know, the idea that because of the color of your skin or because of your culture that you are not valid as a human being, to me is just it's so ridiculous. I mean, the same way that being a gay man is valid, the same way that being a Black person is valid, or an Indian person is valid, or a white person is valid, or
let me tell you, Alistair, my dad is going to be 68 years old. He's been in this country for over 40 years. Okay. When I'm married, I'm the first one to marry an African American in my family of 300 something people. My father was probably the very strictest Muslim, typical Indian man. Let me tell you something. You even say something about Black anything to him, let alone you talk about my daughter. I don't care what you say. He goes off as it is. But you say something Black this, or Black people this, my father will dead them. Like, I'm talking about, he will go off on them. And I said, see, that's what I'm saying. You don't need to. People are hurting. People are treated unfairly. You're going to do something, you fight for that shit and do what's right. But if you're going to sit at a dinner table or whatever and talk about this kind of, oh, he's Black, oh, that Black boy, oh, that Black girl, oh, that Indian girl, you already brought that shit to the table. There's no need for that kind of.
Well, I'm okay with talking about it, but I want to have a conversation that is
but you like, get what I'm saying. Like, it's ways to go about it is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, like, you don't have to constantly stress that kind of, it's like you're saying it in a negative sense. Like, there's no need for that. Like, even it makes me uncomfortable when people say Black, because I'm always like, okay, like, people say white, people say Black, but then I'm like, are we supposed to be saying Caucasian and African American? Like, I feel always like all these labels.
Right. You know, it's, you know, it's one of those things. I think that, you know, with our demographic, we grew up in the age of I see no color. And you know, one of the things that presents a problem with not seeing color is not seeing culture. And I think that, you know, what I've had to do in my life, because I grew up being like, I don't see any color. Everybody's all the same. And it's like, no, we're all human beings, but no, we have unique qualities of who we
Yeah.
are that make us individuals or make us, you know, unique. So I want you to see that I'm a Black person. I want you to understand that I'm a Black person with a rich Black culture and a
Thank
Black
you. Yes.
mother and a
And we're
Black
proud. We're
family.
proud
So,
to be who we
you
are. We
know,
ain't got no problems.
yeah, I think that that's the direction I'm looking forward to. I think that that's the direction through a lot of this is bringing race to the conversation and really having a real discussion about it. You know, and being open to being like, oh, I never saw it that way. You know, I didn't see it
Right.
in that direction.
Right.
Because I think that would broaden our consciousness in a real way. And I think that part of the issue with a lot of race relations in America is not so much that people haven't taken action, is that so many people have been going through the motions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They haven't been really dealing with themselves in a real way
That
about where
part.
am I?
Yes.
What am I doing? You
Yes.
know? So I think that again, this move has opened our eyes to being like, yo, like no more going through the motions,
Yo, nobody
or at
cares.
least,
But you know what? I'm so tired of people always telling you what you can't do.
what do you
Why
mean?
don't we talk, like, with anything being different, being a minority, being physically different like me, whatever it is.
Right,
I'm
right,
tired of
right,
people constantly telling you shit that you can't do. Why don't you look at the
right,
things
right,
that we can do? You get what I'm saying?
right,
Like
right,
as an
right,
example with little people. Great.
right,
There's great platforms on TV. I'm for it. Then there's some
right,
ratchet, ridiculous stuff on there too. I'm
right,
like,
right,
I really don't live like this. Like, you know what I
right,
mean? Like,
right, right,
why
right,
don't you see things from a different perspective instead of always assuming everything's one set way just
right,
because they're African
right,
American, just because they're gay, just because
right,
they're Indian, just because they're little? I'm tired of
right, right,
everybody
right,
seeing so small. Everybody swears they see big
right,
things in the world and big plans, but really
right,
you don't.
right,
You're still in
right,
this little
right, right.
box. You get what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I think that so many of us are. I think that it's being conscious of yourself is a choice, and I think that that's something I do believe with all my heart is actually happening right now. I think
Mhm.
so many people are becoming more aware of themselves and what
Yes.
they
And you
don't
need that.
know. You know, it's the only way, in my opinion, it's the only way to live. Well, let me rephrase that. There are multiple ways of living. For me, being aware of self is one of the healthiest ways of functioning and the conscious ways of functioning. I think that everyone's in their process and in their journey. I mean, overall, and I mean this earnestly, we're going to every generation for the rest of our lives, in my opinion, is always going to have to go through this push and pull of
Yep.
progress and order. It's going to happen for the rest of our lives, you know? So again, once we get over the hurdle of race relations, we're going to have to deal far more seriously about trans relations, or, you know, or 2,000 years now, we'll be talking about cyborg relations. I mean,
Hmm.
there's going to be, you know, we're talking about the future of our country, our nation. There's always going to be this push and pull. So I find
Hmm.
myself now no longer becoming angry about the conversation, but really trying to have the conversation in a real way, but first
Yep.
having that conversation with myself. And that's something
Thank you.
I think that I didn't do for years, was say, as opposed to pointing the finger, where am I falling short? And then trying to create solutions for myself to
And
be far more
it takes a
inclusive.
lot to get to that step that you're at. A lot of people
Yeah,
don't want to hold themselves accountable and
right,
will blame everybody else for all the stuff that's going on, but when it's a fix within
right,
yourself.
right, right,
So
right, right, right.
that,
It's real.
let me tell you, Alistair, this was like probably one of my most inspiring conversations. I
Mm,
want to continue this dialogue with you. What I'm going to do is we're going to end it here, and you're going
I
to send
love
me all
it.
your information so I can put all your stuff up so everything comes to you. And with this journey,
Please.
may God bless you with all of the people that you need to change and influence and inspire, and you make this
Yeah.
into bigger, bigger and better things, even more.
We don't, I'm gonna do what I can, one
And
step at a time, one
I'm
inch
here
at
in
a
any
time.
way to help.
Thank you for sharing this platform with me. I really appreciate it. Hi, Natalie. How are you? Look
Natalie
at
was in
you,
there. She
green
was in there. Her
hearts.
little green hearts made it in. We love you, Natalie.
We
So
love you, Nat. You know, before I forget, I'm thinking about doing a Union High School dance class. So I will make sure to make everyone
goodbye.
aware of that.
We're
And we'll
there.
do it via Zoom. It'll be the high school reunion that we've always deserved.
I can't. We're still planning that. We're
So
gonna still plan that, but we're so for
you
it.
know, yeah, I'm here
Okay.
for it. I'm here for it.
Take care,
Thank you
Alistair.
so much. I'll see you soon.
See you. Bye.